The idea of festivals in India was, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was brought in mostly by Nikhil Chinnappa.
All of these icons, definitely, I would say, have played a large part in bringing that culture into the country, right? And Sunburn is our first, let's say, large-scale music festival.
Favorite artist you opened for?
Yeah, so I think favorite festival, okay. I can say Carl Cox definitely was one of the biggies in the scene.
Okay.
Carl Cox is like literally the daddy of the electronic music still
Right.
in the world,
Okay.
right? And we're fortunate enough to open for him.
So, again, the idea of enjoying music, does it get enhanced with drugs? Is that why people...
Yeah, for sure. It's just a chemical being infused into your
In your
brain
brain,
that
yeah.
tricks your brain or tells your brain that you can do a lot.
Correct.
Right, and it also opens up your mind to a lot of more possibilities.
Yeah, guys, this is not propagating drugs.
Hello, BO fam. In today's episode, I have Arjun Nair, one of India's biggest electro DJs and a music producer. A lot of people love partying and a lot of the younger generation wants to enter this profession. But nobody really knows the reality of this industry. Which is why I got Arjun today, who has played and curated over 1,000 shows and the biggest festivals all over the world to share the behind the scenes of the DJing and the party industry. He shares his journey of how he got started as a DJ, what it takes to organize a music festival, the secret of how you could jump into this industry, and the amount of money you could be earning as an artist of his level. But before we jump ahead, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It'll help us reach more people. So, let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Barely Opinionated Show. This one is special because we are doing something slightly different. We have a veteran, I would say, from the music industry, Arjun. So you're part of Answer Music, right? Answer Music is you and your partner,
Yes,
right? And I can call you guys one of the top techno DJs in India, right?
I'd like to believe so.
Arjun, how's it going?
Fantastic.
So, why I wanted you for this conversation is because everyone loves to party, right? Everyone wants to go to the clubs, and people like you, DJs like you, are the ones that make us enjoy our nights. But then, what really goes behind all of that chaos that happens in that one night is what I wanted to talk to you about, and this industry in general. So, I just want to start off by talking about. Let's start with the bang, right? What is the biggest challenge that you face as a DJ today?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we face as DJs today is just that, unlike before, it's not just about playing music anymore, right? DJing is just so much lot more, right? And you really need to have your hands into like 1,000 different things, right? Besides the music, it's also about being noticed. It's about being heard. It's about standing out in the vast ocean of DJs that are just being born every day. Right. So I guess, I think the real challenge is having to split our entire attention to different things than just focus on the music.
Got it.
Right. And I guess that's what defines.
I think being a DJ, being a solo DJ or being like a freelance DJ it's like being an entrepreneur, right?
Exactly.
Because you have so many other things to take care of.
Absolutely. In fact, that's the best way I'd like to refer to it as well. It's nothing less than running your own business.
Correct.
Right. It's day in, day out of what are your tasks, a task list for the day. What are you looking to achieve during this month, this week? What's the next 6 months going to look like? What's your yearly plan? What's the next 3 years going to look like? What's that horizon look like? So it's almost pretty much exactly like a company. You have a social media team working on you, your entire brand. You have your management that's working on your bookings. You have a team that's dedicated to just make sure that, your PR relations are great.
Right.
So, that it's pretty much just like in any other organization.
Right.
Right. And the more you see it that way is the more you're going to succeed.
Got it. I have one question. There's an accusation on DJs that you guys just use a pen drive and just play them. They have it pre-recorded and just play that and pretend.
We also tell you to put your hands up.
Yeah. So what is that about?
Well, see, unlike earlier, again, going back to when I first started DJing.
When did you start?
Okay. I think I started DJing all the way back in 2008, 2009.
15, 16.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Long time back.
Okay.
That time I used to do it for fun. never really saw it as a profession.
So you were working somewhere and you were DJing?
No, at that time I was in college, just about, getting out of college. I was interested in like 100 different things, and just like one of those things was music. And I was always inspired about music, and from a young age, obviously. And dance music, and more importantly, electronic music really called out to me, right? And I was exposed to, my early childhood was in Kuwait.
Okay.
And we had a lot of international radio stations where we listened to music that's fresh across the world, and more US based and stuff. So we were exposed to a lot of music, international music early in the day, right? And for me, it was I found this real pull towards electronic music, right? And when I started exploring more of it, it really stuck, right? And when almost when I was getting out of college was when I got to attend my first gig. Right?
Okay.
And it was the first time I entered a nightclub, and this was in Chennai, right? And when I got in there were about like 600-700 people in the club, proper nightclub. And
Does Chennai have that kind of a nightlife?
Yeah. Chennai had an incredible. I mean, it has its ups and downs, right? And I think around the time when I was just being exposed to this and just getting into the club scene there, it was booming.
Okay.
I would say definitely one of the best scenes in the country at that point in time, because again, Chennai had 24-hour license, so parties used to run late.
Wow.
Till like 4-5 in the morning, some of them to even 6-7. Right? So it was really cool. And so like I said, I attended my first gig, and I was blown away by what the DJ was able to do to the audience, right? And I was listening to tunes, and I was like, damn, this feeling is great, and I'd probably want to do this someday, right? And I already love music, and I do this, very off the bat, right? So I probably want to do this, and that's when I was like, okay, this is something I want to check out. So, and clubs have this couples only sort of a situation. So I had to find a way around it. So I started making friends who were DJs. And then just through the DJ's guest list, I used to get in and hang out next to the DJ console. And, club is going crazy dancing. I'm standing right next to the DJ, looking exactly at what he's doing, and figuring out, what do those knobs do? What do those faders do? And eventually, I started picking it up, and I learned the digital software side of things, got an understanding, then slowly started practicing.
Did you ever use virtual DJ also?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, man. Yeah, every DJ uses virtual DJ at least.
Oh, really? Okay.
So when you start, that's how it works, because the equipment's expensive. Right?
Yeah. Virtual DJ got like helped a lot of people get
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's the only way you get to see like a digital interface of what's really happening on a DJ console, right? So, yeah, I mean, I started with that, figured out, what it was, and I was like, wow, this is cool. And I started, just at our own friend circles, our smaller parties, I used to just play for fun. Until eventually someone was like, hey, listen, we're throwing this New Year party. Do you want to play? I was like, really? Do you think I can? They're like, yeah, you'll be playing music for all our parties, right? So I ended up playing for it. It was incredible.
Did you get paid for it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
But it was, considering how excited I got with that amount, and looking back now, it's not much.
No, so coming back to the question, what is it about DJs using pen drive?
So yeah, the pen drive. So back then it used to be big CD, CD players, and you had to like have a collection of CDs. The bag used to be like huge, this big, right? And you have like maybe tens and hundreds of CDs, and you used to keep putting them in and playing, and it's a lot of hard work, right? You got to burn these CDs and put them on high quality, make sure they're all arranged, organized. Then you got to print out the labels and stuff, right? It's ridiculous. Cataloging was crazy, and then in between all that madness of playing, you got to skim through your music, pick the right CD, and make sure it happens. Now the technology's moved so much further, and now we have softwares that help you organize your music.
Correct.
Right? And at the end of the day, you can organize your music, separate them into folders, and export them onto a pen drive. Right? And that's all it takes to plug.
So my question is, is your set already in that pen drive and you just plug it in, and then what are you doing on the set?
Oh, okay. So so what happens is that like I mentioned earlier, you can create different folders of
Correct.
music, right? You can organize your music. So what we do is that I don't make an entire playlist per
Right.
se. So I have music categorized by moods.
Got
I have music categorized by energy, by BPM,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. And I mean, over the years, you find what really works for you,
Right.
right? So sometimes it's like a warm-up set,
Mm-hmm.
which is like an early set. So early set, you don't really end up playing slamming tunes, right?
Right.
You play more nice and
Chill.
chilly. Yeah, so you ideally want to get the people, start from ground zero and up,
Correct.
right? So it's basically categorized,
Mhm.
and you have them saved on pen drives, in folders into your pen drive, and when you plug that into a CD player, it shows you those folders,
Right.
right? And in the CD player, you can let's say even sort them out in different types of ways, right?
Right.
You can sort them out by name, you can sort them out by BPM,
Mm-hmm.
by key,
Mm-hmm.
and all of those things,
Okay.
right? So that's it. I mean, you pick your music from there. So usually how it works is that we read the crowd,
Mm-hmm.
we pick the folder that we'd like to play the music
Right.
from, read the energy, and then just play the music.
Just play the music.
Yeah, that's
Got
about it.
Got it. So at this point, you started at the time when digital was not as as frequent, right? And
Yeah.
you would have probably started. You also started with the stack of CDs, or
Yeah, for sure. We had a whole bunch of CDs.
so.
Yeah.
Do you feel some sort of an envy towards the new DJs that are coming out because it's so much more easier for them to get into it and
Yeah.
and figure
So,
it out?
I wouldn't say envy, but
Yeah.
I think it had its own charm.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you ask any DJ who's played with CDs and stuff, would obviously say that they really enjoyed that era. I mean, that was a super fun time. I mean, you pride yourself about having
Correct.
a big collection of music, and you can physically show what it looks like.
Right.
Right, on a pen drive, it doesn't really
It doesn't have
sort of
that impact. Yeah.
Right, so that side of it is cool.
Huh.
But right now, yeah, I mean, the barrier to entry is almost zero.
Very low.
Right, so it's almost zero.
So does that annoy you, like the fact that you had to struggle so much to get into this, while now it's like anyone can just like
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't annoy me, but yeah, I would say that it plays an important part in the kind of in the amount of DJs that are coming out right now, and definitely there's no filter on it. So you have a bunch of people that just call themselves DJs just because it's easy,
right.
right? You put the music onto the pen drive, and then I just try to do all these gimmicks. And see, now with tech, you can literally make a mix very easily, right, with software.
Correct.
And different things. You don't literally need to know how to beat match or any of those things. So if you're using software, you can do something as simple as sync. Even you can do that on the player as well.
Right.
But again, you need to have a little bit of knowledge on the background to make sure they sound nice.
Correct.
Right? There's harmonic mixing, there's key mixing, all of that stuff.
Is AI impacting you in any way in such cases?
It is very helpful, and it's vast, and
It's helpful, is it?
yeah.
How are
It's
you
helpful,
using it?
and it's vast as well. See, like, there are so many things that AI can also do, right? I haven't entirely explored it fully, but it can do crazy things. Like, for example, it can remove vocals from tracks,
Yeah, correct.
right? That you need, and it can also you can even through prompts get out a beat,
Right.
put out a beat,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
With zero.
Have you tried that? Have you tried
Yeah,
that?
yeah, we've tried it. Again, like I said, so the prompt and I mean, it's a long process,
It's a long process.
right? And there are many, and I haven't really jumped into it. Although I'd probably, in hindsight, I probably should. Yeah, I mean, you can just more importantly, you see how it's being used in voice
Correct.
sort of situations.
Correct.
You can get people to say or sing phrases or songs for you in different people's voices. So scary that way. Right?
But what I'm wondering is, can AI also come into the part of executing the DJ's job, in the sense that, for example, how you're saying that you sense the vibe and the flow of your entire set moves from chill to like little upbeat, and then it goes to like hyper, right?
So I don't doubt that it will eventually.
It will.
Right? Definitely, I don't doubt it. But it will definitely lack a human touch.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So I think the thing that keeps it more fluid and more organic is the fact that we can see where people are at. Right. And see the tough part. Again, these are again the things you don't see in the DJing scene. But when you come to a party, you're just like, what is he playing?
Correct.
And stuff like that. But the actual thing is that, in a nightclub, let's assume that there are 200 people, right? And 200 people come from different backgrounds, different spaces, different places, different moods that they were a part of, different conversations they're a part of. Now, all of them come there and get into one single room. Now, each of them are in a different state of mind.
Correct.
Right? Your role as a DJ is to get them all synchronized into one single thing. Right? Some of them might be really in a high state, some of them in a low, somewhere in the mid. You bring them all together, bring them down into a nice groovy state. You bring them from ground zero, bring them all to a common plane, and from there you build it up. And that's how sometimes you feel. I mean, right now these days you find a lot of clubbers are very impatient. Because we are all from the TikTok and your Instagram and your story generation. Everybody wants instant gratification, right? And it doesn't work that way. A nice DJ set usually has its lows, because without the lows you don't feel the highs. Right? And it can't all just be high.
Got it.
Right? So you really need to, there are parts of the set that are meant to bring you down.
That are meant
to bring you down.
Because when I'm listening to a DJ, sometimes I'll be like, why is he playing this?
Exactly. So that's the thing. Like I said, people have different energies. And if you want to bring them onto a same plane, you got to ease them down into some like a grounded state, then slowly bring it up and make them feel each, progression. Then get them to understand the nuances on those beats, and unconsciously they slowly start getting into the groove, and then you have a nice party, right? So
very interesting.
That's something that happens on the background.
So the idea of party, or rather the idea of festivals in India was, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but was brought in mostly by Nikhil Chinnappa, because he started Supersonic.
It wasn't Supersonic, it was Sunburn.
Sunburn, huh?
Yeah, it was Sunburn, and yes, Nikhil Chinnappa was a big part of that revolution.
Is he the guy who brought that festival culture to India? Would that be right to say?
So it's a bunch of people actually.
Okay.
So it's Nikhil. There were partners at Sunburn as well.
Right.
So they did that together. They brought out the IPs, and
Nikhil Chinnappa is the famous guy.
Yes. So everybody has their own roles and responsibilities in this whole process. He was the face. We had people working in the background as well. Again, putting up music festival is a long process, right? Right from conceptualizing the festival to artist bookings to educating the audience on what's coming up, what is this all about, right? And I think all of these icons, definitely, I would say, have played a large part in bringing that culture into the country, right? And Sunburn is our first, let's say, large-scale music festival, and right now, again, in the top 15 music festivals in the world, right? So, yeah, they did play a role, but having said that, there were always music scenes happening in different parts of the country, even before that, way before that.
It just wasn't done
at a scale that big, and it wasn't put onto a platform. It wasn't called anything, So things like that used to always happen. But again, it was the official start to the music festival scene in India, right?
Arjun, I want you to take me back to the early 2010s, or not early 2010, late 2010s.
Okay.
Because right now, when we look at the party culture, of course, a lot would have changed, and with the way the laws have gotten stricter, the rules have gotten stricter, people have become more aware of things, right?
Yep.
The woke culture essentially also influences a lot of things that go around this culture, right? But I'm guessing in the late 2010s, early 2000, like 2011, 2012, I don't think it was like this. The party scene at that point would have been completely different from what it is right now.
Yep, it was very different. I would say it was definitely different.
It was more liberal.
Yeah, liberal. See, again, in every culture, you have pockets of different things.
Right.
Right. So you have commercial music on one side, you have underground music on the other side, and everybody's pulling their own strings.
Right.
Right. And everybody's telling their own story. Right. So from that aspect, yes, it was very different. So I mean, how I'd like to categorize this is there were people who were doing this purely for the part where people want to dance, have a good time, enjoy. Then there were people who were doing this to introduce people to new stuff. Right. So again, those were the two different sides of things. So I mean, again, it's not something that was naturally there in India, like the whole dance music culture, electronic music, partying, nightclubs. I mean, it was always there. Music was always there, but nightclubs, and it's something that we've borrowed from outside as well.
Correct.
Right? So as a culture, it was getting introduced into the country. And again, I mean, it's not, that wasn't the early stages. It was obviously way before my era as well. There were people doing that way before I even got there. Right? So, but yes, at that point of time, like social media was scarce. You don't have the kind of influx of social media back then.
Correct.
Right? It used to be word of mouth.
Correct.
You'd find out, what people are talking about in certain parties, right? And where people are going and what are the reviews like. And you'd only probably, see some posters.
It would be an elite
at different places.
It would be an elite thing at that point. For the elite crowd.
Debatable, right? The party, see, again, now when you take up like the demographic for a party audience, right? So you have, it's always split into different categories again.
Correct.
You have people, I mean, slightly older crowd who come there to drink, already have the funds with, it's more like a social gathering sort of a situation. And then you have the early adapters, right? Like people who are just out of college. They are inspired by music. They come there to dance. They come there to be.
We have two in the room.
Yeah. So, they come there to learn something new about the music, right? So that was also the categorization of stuff, right? So you find like both these kinds of people, right? And they're very different from each other. Right. So like, you can't say the party scene is just this or just that. It's a mix of both.
Got it.
And you have to cater to both. Yeah.
Interesting. So again, the party life, the party culture also comes with a lot of negatives, right? And I want to dive deep into that. Firstly, the alcohol and drug culture which comes with the nightlife. Do you as a DJ feel responsible for that kind of thing? Because people are coming there. Like I go to a party, I'm going there to drink and have fun, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine, which is completely fine. But then there are people that are going on overboard with it. There are drugs that are involved in this ecosystem as well. Do you feel any part in it? Do you feel responsible for it, or you're just like, I'm here to give a good time?
I wouldn't say I mean, largely I would say that we don't entirely, we're not directly responsible for it, right? But I would, I can say that yes, we do have a certain responsibility in the music space. See, these are things that we see on an almost regular basis.
Correct.
Right? For people, it's new. They want to experience something nice. They want to come to a party and they're like, oh, this is like, oh, drinking, oh, drugs.
Yeah.
And there's a huge taboo about how drugs are being used and abused.
Correct.
And stuff like that. But for us, it's like, it's part of the ecosystem, right? And we've seen it. And we've seen it not just here, but we've seen it abroad. We've seen things like this happen. There is a culture that, it's like, internationally, there are many places that it's legal.
It's legal, yeah.
Right? And in India, absolutely not. Right? And in the countries that it's legal, it's very interesting to see how they deal with situations like this.
Very interesting.
Right? So it's stuff that we are not exposed to. But
can you give an example?
Yeah. So like, for example, in Europe, a lot of places in Europe, Amsterdam and places like that, there are...
Ibiza is the party capital of the world.
Ibiza is the party capital, but not legal.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, but in Amsterdam, it's at least legal.
Right.
You can smoke.
Yeah.
Cannabis and stuff like that. And they sell it. And even with respect to drugs, they're pretty, I mean, I wouldn't say they're completely liberal, but, they're quite lenient. Like, you have signboards in clubs that say, in case you have taken something and you don't entirely understand it and you need help, speak to your closest bouncer.
Oh, wow.
Right? And they will help you.
Wow.
And they have boards that say that, in case you're finding it difficult, you're feeling uncomfortable and you've consumed something.
Wow.
They'll help you. They sit you down. They tell you, hey, listen, what have you? They'll find out what you've taken. They'll calm you down. They'll probably give you medical assistance if you're having a tough time. And so, I mean, that's very encouraging. So now what happens is that at least people are not irresponsible with their drugs. In fact, a lot of music festivals, there are a bunch of music festivals in the world that actually at the festival have a drug testing station. You can take your drugs, show them the drugs, and they will test it and tell you if it's pure or adulterated.
Wow. Okay.
Right? So that way if you're consuming good stuff or not. And they have they tell you this is what...
Do you think that's a better way to...
Absolutely. See, the thing is that more you restrict, at least this is, I'm sure all of us have this experience, is that when you're restricted to do something, you want to try it out.
Yeah.
Curiosity.
You want to be a rebel.
Yeah, curiosity kills the cat.
Correct.
It's simple. It's not drugs. It's not anything for that matter. Someone tells you not to do something. You have that little part in you that wants to find out what it's like. right? It's not at a point of addiction or anything. It's just that you just want to know what it is,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And I would say that anything for that matter, leave drugs aside. It's always good to have the right education before you
Get into it.
consume or try or any of these things.
Correct.
Right? Always good to find out, speak to somebody who's already experienced something like that. Read up about it and figure out, and then decide for yourself if that's something you want to do or not. Right? This is at the end of the day a choice that you make.
Correct.
And I mean, peer pressure, of course, is there, but it's something that you need to navigate, and you can only tell if you navigate it yourself.
So, again, the idea of enjoying music,
Mhm.
does it get enhanced with drugs? Is that why people?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, so it's like this. Why do you take medicine when you fall sick? Right? You take medicine when you fall sick because it helps certain parts of your body to recover fast.
Recover fast.
Right? So in terms of what do these drugs do? These drugs, help you to really like understand
Different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, see, I'm just saying, see, for me, we have, as musicians, as DJs, we have trained ears. When we listen to music and when a normal person listens to music, slightly different.
It's different.
Right? So we listen to each and every element, each and everything that they've used in terms of, okay, this sort of sound, this sort of thing, this is coming here. And you can hear in the background that, okay, they've used this atmospheric sound in the background. It sounds really cool. Right? And we are splitting the music like that. Right. So now let's say a person, I mean, this is again stuff that, you know about drugs is that it helps you to understand those tiny, minute details that much more
Very
in depth. And again, it slows down. So it got to do a lot with your state of mind. It calms you down. And, I mean, some of them take you higher, gives you a lot more energy. Hours of dancing is not possible. Like, if you tend to get tired. Right?
Correct.
And sometimes drugs give you a lot of more energy.
Correct.
Stuff like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of things
Different
to it.
ways.
Different ways to it. Again, see, it's like, it's just a chemical being induced into your brain that, tricks your brain or tells your brain that, you can do a lot.
Correct.
Right? And it also opens up your mind to a lot of more possibilities. Right? So there are many drugs that do that. And then obviously there are drugs that even make you feel like absolute shit. Right? So again, you need to know what,
guys, this is not propagating drugs. This is just learning about it.
Yeah. I mean, see, the thing is that, like I said, right? So it's, for me, personally, I don't do any drugs. In fact, the last 6-8 months, I've completely stopped alcohol as well. Right? But like I said, it's part of the ecosystem. You see this happening as part of the culture abroad, a lot of places. And it's important that you know what's happening.
Yeah.
Right? And you see stuff like this happening. You see,
better to be educated than ignorant.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And you delve into it. You want to know, like, see, I have made a conscious choice of, like, I don't smoke at all. Right? Never really was a fan of smoking. Right? And now this is a choice that I have made. Right? And I've made it out of my own information that I've gathered from whatever I've learned or what I've seen from my friends, go through.
Correct.
And I've said, okay, this doesn't sound very exciting. I want to drop this.
Correct.
The same thing for drugs, same thing for drinking. Right? And I no way would advocate drugs. Right? But again, it's all about informed decisions.
Yeah.
And, there's nothing wrong in experiencing it. But again, in a very extremely controlled environment. And of course, I wouldn't recommend, unless you have the means and this thing. Do not, obviously, breaking the law and stuff like that makes no sense at all. And trust me, I can tell you, I've seen people who have done that and face the wrath of like the entire, system, right? And it's not worth it.
Right. So, okay, apart from the drugs and alcohol, there's also, right now people are talking a lot about women's safety, right? And I feel clubs are a place where women's safety is also a concern.
Yep.
Of course, there are people to look after that, but I don't, based on my experience, I don't think, I think women in that environment do tend to feel more unsafe or insecure because of the men around them and things that could happen. And you hear situations about their drinks being spiked and them being drugged.
Got it.
All of those things.
Yeah. So this is again like this topic is a interesting one, obviously. But in our space, at least the way things are moving towards right now, a lot more action and a lot more things have been put in place to make sure women are safe at nightclubs, right? So all the way from bouncers to having female bouncers.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
So there's like earlier you would only see male bouncers.
Correct.
Right? Now if you go to any club, any resto bar, you'll find a good amount of female bouncers as well,
Interesting.
right, to help assist any situation that comes across in a dire situation, right? And at the same time, there's a lot more awareness, I would say, that's brought into nightlife with respect to safety of women.
Got it.
Right, and there are signals to show that you're in distress. There are different people that you can approach. All of that is in place. Now, having said that, again, now in an environment where there's alcohol, there's high energy, and there are some things that you don't have entire control over, right? And obviously there are audiences which you don't know.
Correct.
Right. So it's always good to be on the safe side by having your guard up.
Correct.
You can't really say what would happen or not.
Yeah.
But yes, there are instances that, that happen. Isolated instances do happen. But I think clubs in general these days are a lot more well equipped than they were before. And I think almost all clubs do have tie-ups with.
What was it like back in the day?
It's just that you look out for one another. That's it. And in fact, that's what we advocate at all our parties.
Okay.
And, all our music festivals, and we have that's part of the mandate that goes out.
Okay.
And in our communications, we always say, look out, for the person standing next to you. And yeah, just keep an eye out. If anybody needs a helping hand, make sure you reach out to them. If you see someone struggling, please reach out to them. So this is stuff that we speak about very often. And as music festival curators, as artists, this is stuff that we even try to push into our audiences and networks, right? And I guess it's happening. It's happening, and it's a work in progress for sure. I mean, we want the women to feel safe,
of course,
right? So, I guess things are put in place, but yeah.
So, the last aspect in this topic that I want to get into is the involvement of police and politicians in this ecosystem, right? Allegedly, cops take bribes. It's like an open secret sort of a thing,
Okay.
right? Whether it's with nightclubs or restaurants or whatever. I know you can't talk about it a lot, but I can say it, right? Allegedly.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of the bars and a lot of the clubs, at least in Bangalore, that not just in Bangalore, actually across India, I know that are associated with politicians, right? And that is what what I've understood, again allegedly, is that because politicians are involved in these bars and in these restaurants, that is what keeps them running as well, because there are so many legal factors involved, whether it's with the nightlife, whether it's with the legalities, and everything, right? What has been your experience with it? I'm sure. So let's go one by one, right? First one, let's talk about police, because I've seen that during parties, if the party runs late or for whatever reason, cops are the first ones to sort of come in, and the first ones they pull down is the DJ, right? And I'm sure you would have faced that at some point or the other.
Yeah.
What is that experience like? Why are the cops doing that?
So there's multiple reasons again, right? So in a situation, especially with a nightclub, how do I put it? So there's especially to run a nightclub, you need permissions, you need your respective licenses, you need to have your safety protocols in place, you need to have things like age under check, make sure there's no underage drinking.
Correct.
So if you see, there are multiple touch points to this, right? Now, the role of the police is actually one that makes sure that you enforce all of these things and all the venues are adhering to all these guidelines and stuff. And fortunately, unfortunately, that there are places that flout these rules.
Correct.
Right? And I don't see it as a negative per se. So there are upsides to it, like police are doing their job for sure, right? But there are times where the industry itself gets a little competitive.
Correct.
And then the police are forced to be used in different ways.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? So you see a lot of competition that's happening, but then you don't want, let's say you're hosting a big night and somebody else is hosting a big night on the same day as well. And it's kind
you're basically implying that one competitor
that sort of politics.
Oh, that's interesting.
That kind of gets into the scene, where that's where the police are manipulated probably in different ways.
Right.
But besides that, I think it's the usual stuff. I mean, as long as you have your licenses in place and as long as you're adhering to the rules, I don't see an interference as such.
But what I've realized is that whether in cases where alcohol is involved and where party is involved, even if you have every check is in place, there is some way or the other that the police can harass the nightclub owner, and of course their intentions in again allegedly may or may not be good, right? And it's usually not good is what I've realized.
So again, the two sides to every coin, right? So there are cops that are aggressive and there are cops that are very nice,
Right.
as well, right? So again, cops walking into a club, shutting the party can be due to a few reasons. One is noise complaints,
Correct.
or
Late.
again running late again is against the rules. So then I don't see where there's wrong.
Yeah.
But if sometimes they come early and try to shut the party for different reasons, that's when it starts getting, like disruptive for the scene, right? And there are many reasons to that. Sometimes they say, no, you guys need to shut late, or there's too many people in the club. So if our official time is 1, they'll have to still shut at 12:30 to make sure that the people dissipate and leave by the time it's 1. And obviously not everybody appreciates that because they've paid money to come there and be there. They want the full experience.
Correct.
Right? So there's a clash with the police and the audience and the nightclub with that aspect. Because, we are already getting only to party till 1.
Correct.
Why do you want to start the party at 12:30? Right? So that sort of a tussle
Right.
is something that happens.
Right. Have you been dragged by cops?
Yeah. So again, that was again one of the aspects, right? So this is back in the day, like almost 10 years back, right? We were playing at a club, and it was buzzing, super crowded, incredible. And out of nowhere, there's someone tapping my shoulder, and they have a phone up in the hand like that. I'm looking back, and I'm like, what's going on, right? And then I realized that he's videotaping the stuff, and like they're literally pulling my headphones out and taking out the equipment and all that. I'm standing in shock, and there's no way for me to get out of this place because literally there's no
Was the
space.
party running late?
No, it wasn't running late. So this is the funny part, right? So then after everything, everybody's fled the scene. We are the only ones because we are enclosed in our DJ console. So we get detained and we get asked, all our details, and we're like, what's going on? We have no idea what's going on. Later we find out that there's this drive that happens to make sure that licenses are in place, and apparently the place didn't have a discotheque license, which means that you can't let people dance. They can have alcohol and be there, but they can't dance. It's
Really?
there's many
Discotheque?
Yeah, you need a discotheque license per se to have a dance sort of a situation going on there. I mean, again, it's all twisted here and there.
Yeah.
Sometimes some of it is, makes sense. Some of it is really bad because, they don't sell new licenses. You have to buy it off someone.
Correct.
And then, that goes at a very high price. And that's where your money factor comes in. But it becomes very difficult to, for these businesses to run, right? So apparently the place didn't renew that license. And the owners fled the scene, right? So who do they take? They take the DJs. So I'm literally like, listen, what do we have to do here? I mean, it's not our responsibility. You have to catch this thing. I'm here to play music.
Correct.
Right? But it comes back to, why didn't you check if they're licensed? I mean, come on, right? It's a nightclub. It's running, right? And if you've let the nightclub run, you need to check if they have the right licenses in place.
Correct.
Right? So we end up obviously getting dragged to the police station for it. I mean, we're obviously let out without any charges, but it's still a scarring experience, right?
So now that you had to go through that, do you check if the nightclub?
Yeah. So now we only play obviously at reputed nightclubs that have all these things in place. In fact, our contracts state that if something goes wrong, we're not responsible.
How much does a DJ like you charge for a night?
Yeah, for a night, it would range, again, say, I would give you an open range, but it can range anywhere, like a decent DJ would charge you anywhere between 60 to all the way to 1.5, 2 lakhs.
Per night?
Yeah, per night.
For 4 to 5 hour gig?
Yeah.
Holy fuck. Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
That's crazy. That's standard?
This is very less compared
Very
to
less?
what you get paid internationally,
Right?
So, like, your big DJs get paid $1.5 million. $2 million,
wow,
things in that range, right? And see, over here it comes down to business.
Correct.
Right? It comes down to business. How much can you get paid based on the amount of business that the club makes? The club can only pay you a percentage of what they are making.
Okay.
Right?
Is it percentage based or is it?
No, it's not a percentage. It's a fixed, usually a fixed fee, unless you're hosting the night.
Right.
If you're hosting the night, it's a percentage of, obviously a sale or the entrance, stuff like that. I mean, you have to work that out.
Correct.
And it depends on the level that you are at as well, right? So nights that we curate, if we are curating the night, then it's our fee plus, let's say,
Sales
a percentage of the sale, because we're bringing in that sort of
Correct.
business, and it's a different sort of a deal, right? So, but usually otherwise it's just the club making sure that they are hiring you for the kind of music that you play. So it's just an artist fee plus your TLB if you're at that level. as well,
Right.
So they pay for your flights, your hotel accommodation, and all of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, the cost of DJing, where do you spend your money?
Okay.
Like, I get you might have a PR team, you might have
Yeah,
social
so
media team.
exactly like I said, right? So it's a big ecosystem, right? We run almost like an organization, in fact, at this point in time. Plus you have your competition and everything, right? So social media itself sucks up good amount of money, right? If you want to stay relevant, if you want to stay heard, if you want to stay visible, you need to be pumping in money into making sure your content is nice, it's going out. I'm sure you understand,
Yeah.
right? So, and a lot of others do understand it, because we are in the creative
Ecosystem.
economy or ecosystem, right? So it's like you need to make sure that that's alive in a sea of like millions of DJs. How do you stand out, right? So there's stuff that needs to go out. So that's one side of it. Second side of it is music is expensive, equipment's expensive, renting out studios
So
expensive.
again, you have to buy copyrights to all the music.
Yeah, I mean, so we buy our music, right? So you buy the music of this thing. I mean, it's also a way to support the music
The artist.
right? So you buy your music, it only seems fair, right?
How much does it cost to buy a single track?
One single track could cost up to right from $1.5 to $2.5.
Okay.
Right, and sometimes $4.
And that usage rights is unlimited.
Yeah, unlimited. You can use it, and there's no problem at all. I see it's much more easy with things like electronic music, because it's not from here, right?
Right.
It's from the global scene, right? So, and it's quite free use in the global scene. When you buy buy the music, you get to use it as well. I mean, unlike Bollywood and stuff like that, you have your T-series and you have different entities that come in and claim that they own the copyright, so you have to pay them a percentage. That's when it gets really like outrageous to a part where they start exploiting DJs that play for weddings and stuff like that.
Right.
It's crazy. Right? I mean, unfortunately, we're not in that scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, so music is a chunk of the money goes there. And again, equipment, all of that is expensive. Our lifestyle in general becomes expensive. Right. So, I mean, even to sustain what we do, we need to get out, go there, meet people. It's expensive.
So, coming back to our previous topic, you spoke about the harassment from police and all of that, right? We didn't jump in the politician part. Why are politicians involved in this ecosystem?
I mean, honestly,
is it just because like they have money, they can?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a politician's involvement in the nightlife scene other than the fact that, let's say they have money, they want to park it somewhere. It's a good business opportunity.
Got it.
They invest.
Got it.
That's about it.
And it's good to partner up with them as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you have anybody who has money, is a good person to partner with, right?
No, even the power. No.
Yeah, the power. Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, we live in a space, fortunately, unfortunately, where a lot of these things can be bent. The rules can be bent, and always good to have somebody with some power to help you out with your legalities. What usually takes maybe days and months or weeks can be sorted out in a phone call.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct. So last year, Sunburn was cancelled, right? And even though they had all the necessary permissions, even after that was cancelled. Why do such unexpected things happen?
A lot of things. I mean, what you see is the tip of the iceberg, but there are many reasons to it, right? So, like, say for example, things in Goa are not the best at its best position right now.
Got it.
Right? Goa used to be the party capital of the country.
What happened?
Used to be, right? So now you have a lot of things that are happening in Goa, right? So now I'm sure you're aware. If you're not aware, also there is a rule in India that says that you can't play music beyond 10 p.m.
Correct.
Outdoor music beyond 10 p.m.
Okay.
But if you've been to Goa and you know the Goa party scene, 99% of the venues in Goa are all open air.
Yeah.
Right? They're all by the beach. They have some part of it which is open air. So now what happens is that when a rule like that comes into play, I mean, it wasn't questioned earlier.
Okay.
I mean, and obviously most of these clubs are also not really inside the residence. They're all by the beach, secluded in decent places, unlike your cities, right? So it wasn't a problem for the longest time. But then out of nowhere, someone voiced out the thing saying that why is music allowed after 10 p.m. outdoor? And so then they started cracking down on clubs which had outdoor spaces to stop the music by 10. But then, then clubs were forced to build indoor sections for their entire spaces, invest more money into that entire process. No, but it started killing the market, because if you wanted a party indoors, you could do that in your city. Why do you want to go to Goa?
Yeah.
What's the whole point of flying all the way to Goa by the beach if you didn't have that liberty? And then if party is going to start at 10, you're rather better partying in your own city.
Correct.
Right? So it started affecting the ecosystem in a lot of ways. Now, coming to Sunburn, the question that you asked, and bigger festivals, permissions come into play. A lot of permissions come into play. Locals, there are a whole bunch of locals that are pro Sunburn, because their businesses are growing, right? And there are a whole bunch of people that are against Sunburn.
Got it.
Right? Because of, let's say, nuisance, traffic. Like, literally Goa becomes chock-a-block that entire week.
Correct.
It's tough to get anywhere because of the influx of tourists that come in and stuff like that. So, I mean, they have their own reasons. And again, it's a lot of, there is a bit of political play, into the picture where, okay, there's one party that says, okay, we want the tourism to sustain. Other party that says, oh, you're spoiling our culture. Right? So there's different sides that are brought onto the table, and then, based on whoever's winning at that current point of time, it works and it's pulled down. And sometimes, some people use the so-called influence that you mentioned earlier to say, okay, I don't want this party happening. You got to get it cancelled. But the flip side to it is, you've invested so much money. People have booked their flights. People have booked tickets. So much of money goes to waste. So much of things goes down the drain. And now, this is it. This is, again, like I said, this is the tip of the iceberg. There's so many things on the back end that keeps happening, that keep pulling in different directions. That
okay, let's talk about some fun stuff now. Let's talk about what has been your favorite festival that you've played at till now?
Favorite festival that we've played.
First, let's name drop. What are the festivals?
So we played at a whole bunch of festivals. We played at Supersonic. We played a bunch of gigs for Sunburn. We've done. We played at F1.
In 2017, right?
Abu Dhabi. Played at a festival in Philippines once. And then we've played a lot of standalone festivals in India.
Okay.
What are the best festivals? I think everything has its own charm.
Right.
But usually we like playing for curated festivals that are like more one or two artist centric, because that when there's only one or two international artists, you get a better slot to play as well.
Got it.
Right. For the bigger festivals, what ends up happening is that a lot more international artists are.
So you might get like an early.
Yeah, we get a much early set. We end up playing earlier. And this is, again, as an artist, I can tell you, obviously these festivals are fantastic and amazing, right? But from our experience, again, we end up, liking the smaller ones better.
Yeah.
Because it's, like I mentioned earlier, we get to play a lot more important role in crafting that musical experience. Right. And we get probably a better slot and a lot more attention to the kind of music that we are playing. I mean, see, I think the end of the day, the core idea for a DJ is to be heard.
Correct.
Right. And we want to be heard. We want to put out new music, or we want the audience to be educated about, the kind of stuff that we want to showcase.
Correct.
Right. So I think it comes down to that at the end of the day.
But you still haven't told which was your favorite festival.
So favorite festival?
Or say favorite artist you opened for.
Yeah. So I think favorite festival. Yeah. Okay. I can say Carl Cox definitely was one of the biggies in the scene.
Okay.
Carl Cox is like literally the daddy of the electronic music scene in the world.
Okay.
Right. And we're fortunate enough to open for him.
Okay.
Literally handed over the console.
Wow.
To the legend. Right. And it was for us, it's like a dream come true. Like, if 10 years back, if you ask me, will you ever?
This was recent, is it?
Yeah, this is about 2 years back.
Okay.
Right, almost 2 years back.
Okay.
Now. And we would have never guessed it, right? But we ended up spending some time with him, and he came onto the console while we were playing, and he really liked the vibe. So he was like, "No, you guys are gonna play 2 more tracks." We're like, "What?" And it literally came in between our sets and started like really like pumping up the crowd, and it's surreal experience, and
That's like a different feeling altogether, right? When the crowd, when you can like ignite the crowd in that way.
Exactly. This is like about 4,000 people.
4,000.
Yeah,
Like,
3,500, 4,000 people.
what is that the biggest crowd? What is the biggest crowd you've played?
Oh, we played for a lot more. We played for about 10, 12,000 people as well.
10, 12,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane. And those 10, to see that 10, 12,000 people
It's
from
insane. It's
stage.
just a sea of people, non-stop sea of people just keep going. It's amazing. I mean, that's really one of the best feelings in the world.
And what is your favorite city in India to play?
Favorite city?
Can't say Bangalore.
No, Bangalore's home, so it's a lot more comfortable playing here. But favorite cities to play, definitely Goa.
Goa? Okay.
Yeah, definitely Goa. I would say Goa is good. I mean, every city has its own set of advantages. Right?
Uh-huh.
Goa again is like open air stuff.
Right.
Big festivals, playing maybe sometime late into the night.
Uh-huh.
So that's an experience that has its own charm.
Okay.
Right? Because music is for different times of the day, right? And you have music that suits different hours of the day.
Correct.
So it's like you get to play a much wider spectrum of music. So that way, Goa's a lot of fun. Bombay, Delhi has incredible crowd.
What is it about Bombay or Delhi? Bombay again has a good nightlife.
Yeah, it's good nightlife. It's like it's like Bangalore, right? You have a lot more people who are way in tune with the music.
Mhm.
They know their music.
Mhm.
They want new music.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of young audiences that come out. Like the culture is a lot more supported than smaller cities, right?
Right.
So you have a lot more people coming in larger numbers,
Mhm.
and they already are in tune with what you
Yeah.
are going to be doing.
Yeah.
So it's always a lot more fun. Good
Correct.
crowd, right? You want to play for a crowd that's really
That already knows and
and they're aging and they understand what you're doing. You get to play a lot more of the stuff that you usually don't get to play.
correct.
Right? So it's fun that way. But having said that, right now I would say we're in a state where honestly the smaller cities surprise you more.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Which is a small city that's
Lots of them, in fact. Vizag, you have places like Raipur doing sick gigs.
okay.
You have places like Jaipur. It's amazing. And you go to these places and like you see crowds coming out.
I wouldn't expect Raipur.
Mysore.
Mysore.
Mad. Like I think one of the last few gigs we played in Mysore had over 1,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was insane. It's good to see the smaller cities, people are a lot more excited to come out. And there's a lot more exposure to what's happening, right? So, in fact, even now when you go to Goa, you see a lot more people from the smaller cities.
Mhm.
They recognize you and say, hey, you were at Vizag. Oh, you were at, at this place.
Very cool.
Right? And that it's awesome to see that
Yeah.
because that's what starts building the culture in the smaller cities.
Correct.
And when you go to these cities where you expect maybe like just about 100 people, you end up having 250, 300 people. It's amazing to see that.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I had one question, man. I completely forgot. Okay, I'll come to that later. But anyway, I want to understand why is Bangalore's nightlife so bad? Like it sucks. Like
Yeah.
we can't. Places stop serving drinks by like 11:30. We
Yeah.
leave by 12:30.
See, the thing is, again, like I said, a lot of restrictions are coming into nightlife, right? And you really can't put a finger on it entirely. But I think,
As someone from the industry,
Yeah.
you would know something.
yeah, for sure. Like, I would say, see, again, it comes out with the same things I told you. Clubs are under pressure to shut the music on time. They are also under pressure to get the people to leave the premises, early.
Mm.
Those are some of the things that are there. Then the other thing is, again, if you've seen Bangalore,
Huh.
you will definitely know that there's no space for anything new,
Mm.
right?
Correct.
So all the clubs are squeezed into buildings and all sorts of establishments that are always surrounded by some form of residential areas, right? So now that becomes a challenge because again, sound travels, right?
Mhm.
And not everything is. If you look at Bangalore, we have a very few clubs. We have a very few nightclubs.
Mm.
All of the clubs or our pubs that we have in our city are more into an open air model.
Open air breweries.
Open air breweries, and
So those are
they're
places
all
more to chill.
more built like resto bars,
Correct.
if I may say,
Correct.
right? So now they don't entirely have the proper soundproofing. They don't have a proper nightclub sort of a thing, where sound won't be an issue.
Mhm.
Again, like I mentioned earlier, it's in between the residential area,
Yeah.
so you have a lot of restrictions. So they're forced to crack down. They're forced to crack down because there's a nuisance or a sound issue. There's a lot of that happening.
But isn't that the same case in Mumbai or Delhi also?
No, so in Mumbai and Delhi, nightclubs are built like nightclubs.
Okay.
Right? A lot of nightclubs are built like nightclubs. You have like a proper room. Bangalore loves this open air culture. Bangalore likes to have spaces that have
There's such beautiful places which could just like, if they could just host like beautiful parties.
True. They could see, but if you look at it that way, see now when you look at as a market, when you look at let's say a Hyderabad or a Delhi, you see the nightclubs that come in. They are all like huge. They're huge nightclubs. They have proper soundproofing. They have big equipments, big sound systems, all of that. And so hence there's not much of a problem because in a controlled environment, it's easy to control it. Right? I mean, it's easy to control the sound and the levels and all of that stuff. You can't do it here because you don't have the kind of infrastructure.
Interesting.
Right? So it that ends up, interfering with the entire overall experience. But if you look at it as an audience, Bangalore is the best audience. Right? They are very musically forward.
Correct.
Right? And we just lack venues. Even if you want to do a concert, there's barely
We don't have
We don't
venues.
have any venues. You have to go all the way to the airport. And not everybody can do that. And it's an expensive
Parking.
process. Parking.
Parking.
And it's an expensive
Traffic.
process to just get towards the airport side and then come back, find a cab. These are things you don't want to be getting into.
Such a hassle.
It's too much of a hassle.
Like if I think about going, like even like a Zomaland or like the Swiggy, the one they do, I can't remember the name. Even when I think about going to those, it's like so far, and like I'll take my car, but then I can't drink. If I want to drink, then I have to like take a cab. It's
You need to take a cab. You need to have
such a
designated
painful
driver.
experience.
Too many things, right?
Painful experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so if a teenager today wants to become a DJ, how do you recommend they start?
Very simple. You have lots of DJ schools right now. And in fact,
Do they need to take professional training?
they don't need to, but it always helps.
Okay.
Right? So it's instead of you trying to navigate that entire ecosystem on your own, online or wherever else your source is from, you'll have to piece everything together. Right? Whereas if you go to a DJ school, they'll already have all of that ready for you.
Got it.
Right? It just makes it faster. That's
systematic learning.
I mean, I didn't learn from a DJ school per se. But, in hindsight, it's always easier to have professional education. It's just like any other education. If you have the professional education, you know where to look, you know what to look for, and you know what sort of education you're looking to gain. But having said that, there isn't a thing that's not available on the internet as well, right? If you're into, educating yourself, then that's also a nice option. It's just that a school is faster.
Got it. So okay, I've learned how to DJ. How do I get my first gig?
Okay. So you have to spend time. You have to spend time in the system, right? So that is attend shows first to understand what's happening, make your contacts, your networks, associate.
It's a networking game, right?
It is a huge networking
You need to
game.
go to clubs.
Right now, it's become a huge networking game because, like I said, there's thousands and millions of DJs.
Correct.
Right? And every day, maybe 500 new DJs are born, right? Right, and it's not a bad thing as well, but at the same time, there's so many DJ schools and people don't want to go learn skating
Correct.
or painting anymore, right? They get out and they say, okay, what do you want to learn? If you have 3 months, you have a summer vacation. Yeah, rather learn DJing, and you have crash courses that teach you the whole thing in probably in a month.
Right.
Right. So, it's cool. It's exciting. That's what you're seeing all over the world.
Correct. And you become the cool guy if you...
Exactly. And you're instantly the cool guy learning. So literally you have people learning DJing for fun. Right. So it's easy to learn DJing and become a DJ. But to become an established DJ is something that's going to take you a long time. And it takes hours and a lot of hard work to get there. Right. And also because it's an oversaturated market. There's only maybe, let's say there are 50 clubs, but 5,000 DJs. And that ratio can be way more higher. I'm just giving you a rough idea just to put things in perspective. So how do you get those gigs? How do you make that happen again? So spending time in the ecosystem, making sure you build your own audience of followers, right? So you tie up with some sort of a promoter, tie up with the club, give them a better offering. So it's all of that.
So it's all mostly about contacts.
Yeah, it ends up becoming about contacts and also about your fan base, right? So you'll probably ask me, how do you build a fan base without playing a show?
Yeah.
Social media again, and there are multiple platforms now. Just like how we're doing this podcast, you can go live. You have YouTube, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have a billion other platforms where you can put your music out, record a set, put it out, and then it's a tedious process, but initially, obviously, the best way to do it is get your friends to support you,
Right.
then get your friends to support you, and then move on from there.
Got it.
Right?
Got it. Very interesting. And how much? So should DJs just getting into the scene, should they play for free? Should they charge? How much would they expect to make, at least?
Okay.
I'm 1 year into, like, I've learned DJ,
Yeah.
right? I'm just going to say do my first gig, or I'm looking for my first gig.
Yeah. So initially, so I would say what happens is that the most important thing here is that, I mean, obviously nobody's going to pay you till they know what you can do, right? So maybe a couple of free gigs, yes, to show your worth, that can be warranted, no issues about it at all. In terms of payment, again, like I mentioned earlier, if you need to get paid, club needs to make money.
Got it.
Right. So the more you're able to help the club make money is how you're going to get paid at the end of the day, unfortunately.
Got it.
We have not reached a stage where, I mean, we are at least not in our culture. I mean, I wouldn't say culture, in our ecosystem, a lot of it is done via business.
Got
It's
it.
not, let's say, a passion project that you open a club and you run it, right? So people are doing it because they want to make money. And there are a few, maybe a handful of clubs that probably do it to expand the music scene, to like introduce people to new music. But that's rare these days.
Got it.
Right. So at the end of the day, they're going to look at if they want to hire you, are you going to be able to bring in new business? Is that going to make sense for them to book you? And it comes down to just that.
Got it.
Right. If they put you on one of the nights, or if they put you on a flyer, well, people come for you. That's it.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Last few questions I have
Sure.
for you. One is, I heard there were some interesting stories from your early days of starting when you started playing in Chennai.
Okay.
Why don't
Yeah.
you share one of them?
Okay, I can do that. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty much like how you just asked me, how does a new DJ make their scene? So when I first, like I told you, I gave you a small idea of what it was like, right?
Correct.
So it was me initially just being, awed by the entire scene, and then making friends with DJs, getting into clubs and figuring out the stuff myself. So, but when it got down to the stage where I'm like actually a little confident to go and play at a nightclub, I started approaching these clubs where I was visiting and stuff, and said, hey, I'm a DJ too. They're like, you're a DJ? Oh, okay. I'd like to play. How can we let you play? Like, where have you played before? How do we know if you can, handle the crowd? We have like live audience here. Right. So, and I was like, okay. And that kept happening to everybody I was speaking to. And it didn't work out. Right. So that's when I was like, okay, this is not going to happen. I need to prove myself somewhere. So what we did was we rented out the basement of one of my friend's apartment, and we hired sound systems, and we told the apartment that it's a birthday party, and we had the equipment. We went and bought booze from Pondy, which is quite illegal, right? I'm sorry, it was many years back. But yeah, so we bought booze from Pondy, to make sure this is all viable. I mean, we weren't sure. Hiring equipment was expensive as it is.
Correct.
But we had to at least cover those costs, right?
Correct.
So we did up the entire basement. We got UV lights. We had UV paintings.
And this is a friend's apartment.
And friends apart,
Oh, wow.
right? And we hired huge ass speakers, and we just threw out a few invites, and we ended up having about 50-60 people for
Okay.
that party, and it was an insane party.
Okay.
But immediately right after that, we got banned from that apartment. And obviously we want to never come back.
Didn't they immediately just sort of shut you?
No,
It's-
so we played the "It's My Birthday" card
Huh.
for a long time. They realized it wasn't a birthday, obviously, eventually.
Huh.
Right? I mean, we had to shut down at some point. We shut down at some point in the night, but then, the next day this escalated into never seeing you guys here again. So we were like, okay, that kind of made some noise, right? And we had some pictures to go with it, videos to show, and people are like, okay, interesting. But we weren't entirely convinced yet, I think we needed to really and we were like, wow, this is cool. I think we can do something better. So what we did was, the next time we went to a club, like how you have your gymkhanas and stuff like that. We went to a club and we rented out a hall.
Okay.
And we said, okay, we're going to do this party. And again, we said that it's going to be a private sort of a situation. But we sold passes for it.
Oh.
We sold passes for it, and this one really blew up. We had about 400, 450 people.
400 people. This when which year?
And this is in 2009. Around 2009, 2009, I'd say.
Okay.
And we had about 400 people for it. Clubs lost their regulars, And that's when they started, they're like, hey, dude, where's our crowd? What's happening? You know, and people are talking about this party. And then people are like, oh, damn, these guys at the party. So the next time, I didn't have to approach them. They're like, hey, why didn't you guys come and do a party?
Oh, wow.
So it worked out the other way around.
So
And
cool.
So because we had now 400 people is a sizable number.
Correct.
And we made crazy money at that gig. Right? So, and that's when, so clubs were like, hey, why did you come and try a gig here? And then DJs started referring, saying, hey, you know what, this guy's got good crowd.
Yeah.
Why didn't you hire them?
Right.
So that started happening more often.
So has DJing always been profitable for you?
Initially,
Like, has it always been financially good for you?
so far, touch wood, has been good. Right? But initially, again, it's a lot of risk taking.
Yeah.
Right? So, but
It
comes down to that, right? So only if you're confident of doing something and you know you can pull it off, you start taking these risks. And sometimes you take these risks in a blind faith to making it happen, right? And little bit, I mean, somehow, touch wood, at least whatever I've extracted and learned from the industry, I found different ways to make it happen.
Right.
And it's always been working out good for me, for sure. I mean, it has its ups and downs.
You're right.
Right. And I mean, it's the DJing industry, is not engineering. Right. So you have seasons where things don't work out at all. And then you have rains, and then you have,
Yeah, it's seasonal.
downs on music.
Is it seasonal?
Yeah, of course, it's very seasonal.
Okay.
Right. I mean, having said that, you can always have some sort of business or the other, but it's times when business does get affected. Like if you're like in a city like Bangalore, one rain and you have roads flooded, right? And let's say one rains, you can't find cabs. One rain and 90% of your venues have balconies and outdoor sections, and which all gets wet.
Correct.
Right. So in that season, you usually end up losing a lot of shows because either gigs get cancelled because of rain, or crowd doesn't show up numbers that they usually do. Stuff like that end up happening.
Okay.
So that's that. And there are periods where, let's say, a lot of our clubbers, again, are college students and stuff. When they have exams, there's a dip. It is a known dip. Correct. And those guys are the people that fill the club.
Correct.
Right. And then there are people who come and spend.
Correct.
But if you don't have these fillers, even the spenders don't feel like, okay, they want to spend.
So it doesn't look like a happening party.
Exactly. Right. So again, those are low periods. Clubs don't end up spending more money on those times.
Right.
So all of that stuff happens.
Very interesting. Okay, last question. So recently you posted about your fitness transformation, right? Over the last year, you spent a lot of time and effort into getting yourself fit, right?
Yeah.
And healthy.
Yep.
First question is, I want to understand your relation with intoxicants, because DJs also, through their gig, they're drinking, they're smoking, or whatever. What has been your relation with it?
So, fortunately for me, I've not really been like big on any of these things.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Right. So I used to drink occasionally and just for fun. I mean, beer's always nice.
Right.
A couple of drinks always.
So whenever you're playing, you're not drinking.
Not now.
Not now.
Earlier, in fact, in Bangalore, rarely I used to drink. But when we go to different cities, it's always fun because we're meeting friends in different cities after a while. Like, if we are playing at different cities, usually in an interval of a month. Right? In Bangalore, we're meeting people regularly. But when we go to a different city, it's like, hey, we're meeting you after so long. Why don't we have a drink together? So it ends up becoming that sort of a situation. So we used to drink socially.
Got it.
Right? And at least I used to drink socially at one point of time. And sometimes, there was this in-between phase where, I mean, for us, it's always free.
Correct.
It's easy access.
Correct.
And it's part of our, hospitality rider that, we get alcohol.
Correct.
For being the DJ.
Yeah.
Right. So at some point in time when you're playing and, you tend to just end up drinking a bit too much. Right. So I kind of started realizing that and, I started cutting down on that. But largely wasn't really a big fan. But now over the last year or so, I've been consciously cutting down, and last 6 months I've been completely off alcohol.
So what is it that made you realize that you want to focus on fitness?
I mean, it's just about feeling good, right? So largely I started changing a lot of my lifestyle and my schedule. I play badminton in the mornings. I started getting in the gym. And what I've realized is that, I mean, I like doing these things in the morning. So for that, I tend to try and sleep early and wake up early morning. Right. So I wake up every day by 6:37, every day.
Wow.
Right. So now in a situation like that, if you do have a heavy night of drinking, the next day gets compromised.
Yeah.
Right. So gym gets compromised or my game gets compromised, and I don't enjoy doing that.
Got it.
And not just that, you just don't end up feeling at your 100%. Right. And I am a morning person. Right. So I like to feel my 100%.
As a DJ, being a morning person is not.
It's tough. Yeah. So I find it tough now on the weekends, like, now when I have to stay awake and stuff like that. But, we found a rhythm of sleeping in intervals and
Understood.
making sure we balance it out. But yeah, I'm kind of enjoying, just this whole fitness thing. It's been good because no alcohol, no, I've cut down on even, things like Red Bull and stuff like that. And I'm seeing myself being, I think, touch wood, it's the fittest I've been in the last 15 years.
Very cool.
Right. So, I've been doing treks, finding a lot more peace in the outdoors.
Right.
So I mean, it's also a subset of having been in the scene for like 10-15 years. In
You're just done with it, no?
Not just done with it. It's just that these are things that are easily accessible, and when things are easily accessible, you're not excited about it, right? And again, it's about thinking and feeling good, right? So now it's about me physically feeling good and mentally feeling great as well,
Right.
And like I said, being at your physical best at this point in time, at this stage of my life, I feel like, supercharged by it.
Right.
And, I'm excited. And now people are finding it inspiring. And, people asking me, how are you doing it? What are you doing? What are some of the... So that kind of things, these kind of things, keep me encouraged. And it's really pushing the boundaries.
So are you going to DJ all your, like, till the end of your life?
See, music is a passion, right? So I'd like to.
Okay.
Right? I don't...
You want to be in... So do you see yourself DJing at like a 60, or do you see yourself being in the scene but not?
Yeah, probably something like that.
Huh.
Right. So I do see myself being a part of the ecosystem for a very long period of time. DJing, it will always be a part of me. Right. I don't think it can get out of me. Right. So maybe my frequency of shows might reduce.
Right.
But I do see myself always playing, till the end of time. Right. At least till I'm alive. Right. So yeah, for sure.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Arjun.
Thank you.
Conversation was amazing. I hope you guys also enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Where can they find you? Where can they connect with you?
You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube.
You can see his stories every day.
Cloud.
You can see his stories every day. He's posting every day about his badminton routine. I see it every day.
My gym routines, my bag.
Yeah.
My travel and food.
Oh yeah, food
is a...
Bro, how do you eat that kind of food and still stay healthy? Oh, that's
I
crazy.
don't know, it's just the balance, I guess.
Every other day I see a story of like a biryani or like a huge ass thali.
I love food. I love food, and I'm intrigued by different flavors and stuff like that. So that's one of the things I do besides
Acha.
my music. And I travel a lot.
Okay.
And along with travel, I eat a lot.
Okay.
Right. So these are things that come very naturally to me. Right. So along with the eating, obviously now I'm balancing it out by doing like an intensive workout. But I've reduced my portions. Right. So I've reduced my portions from what it used to be. I used to eat like a monster. Now it's a little bit more controlled.
Right.
But I still give myself, the space and time to indulge once in a while.
That's crazy.
Right. So yeah.
Chalo, awesome. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you.